The church is kind of weird. How's that to start a homily? So let's talk about the weirdness to give you some kind of weird church trivia. I think about this a lot, of course, with the election of our new pope. About a little over 5 years ago, as you know, I was elected to be the administrator of the Diocese of Gary when Bishop Hying was transferred to the Diocese of Madison. When he left, the day he left, the consultors gathered together in the conference room at the pastoral center to go through the rite of election. Just like a papal election, we use ballots, and just like that election, you need your majority. And just like that election, you also need an assent. So when it came time that they said, somebody from the group said, you have the clear majority, you've been elected the administrator of the diocese, congratulations. And our canonist said, stop right there. Do you accept election? Yes. Okay, now you can welcome them, because there is that assent. You have to accept. And the moment you do, you're in charge. Right after that, I went out and got the diocesan letterhead and wrote the letter to the papal nuncio in Washington, D.C. Dear papal nuncio, I'm the administrator of the Diocese of Gary, nana. Oh no, he said, according to canon law, yada, 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 I have been selected. And you have to do it that way because there are time limits. You only have a certain number of days for that election to take place. And if it doesn't take place within, I believe it was 3 days, if we don't notify the nuncio that we have selected an administrator, it automatically goes to the metropolitan, who is the Archbishop of Indianapolis, and he would then assign an administrator to the Diocese of Gary. And that assigned person may not necessarily be one of us, because after all, he doesn't know us, so he may assign one of his chancery career or something. But of course, again, it's that moment that you say yes, that everything takes place. Bishop McClory. When Bishop McClory was Monsignor McClory, the nuncio called him and told him that the Pope had chosen him to be the bishop of the Diocese of Gary. Do you accept? Yeah. Yes. As soon as you say that, you're the bishop of the Diocese of Gary. Now it's weird, because we never called him bishop at that point. We call him bishop-elect, because for us, after all, presumably, he didn't look like a bishop because he was still Monsignor McClory, because he wasn't ordained a bishop yet. And he had to work with the nuncio as well as with us to be able to set the date for his ordination, and at that time then too, for his installation as the next bishop of the Diocese of Gary. However, in the Vatican, in the rolls of the books where they keep the lists of bishops, his name would be listed as Bishop of the Diocese of Gary at the very moment he said yes to the papal nuncio, because the Pope had chosen him to be bishop, and he said yes. So now we continue the weirdness, because tomorrow the church celebrates, some people call it the inaugural Mass for the pontiff. Some people call it the Mass to inaugurate his pontificate. They call it all sorts of different kinds of names. Some people call it the installation Mass. Whatever you want to call it, there's a special Mass that's taking place at the Vatican tomorrow, in which the Holy Father will officially be installed as the pontiff of the church. However, he was our Pope the moment he said yes. Doesn't need the inaugural Mass, doesn't need anything else. He's the Pope because he said yes. At that moment, all the other people no longer became papal candidates. They were just cardinals once again, and he was the guy in charge. Are you trying to... Uh-huh. I've never had question and answers before. Of course, because, sometimes they call a bishop to move him to another diocese, but most bishops are made from priests. But the moment they say yes, they're considered a bishop already. Yep. So yes, you can be. Yes. Just like, if you want weird trivia, a pope can be a pope without being a cardinal or a bishop or a priest. In canon law, you just have to be a Catholic man. The cardinals could say, you know what, we know this dude out in so-and-so, and if they all chose, if the Spirit said, pick that person, they would contact that person. Well, they would try to bring him into Rome, and if he said yes, they would ordain him and make him Pope. So yeah, it's really strange, how that happens. But again, it's that moment of assent. And the reason I say that is because, of course, for what's happening tomorrow. So that's my long way of saying, please pray for our Holy Father, because tomorrow is another milestone for him as he officially has his Mass of inauguration. But if you listen to the gospel tonight, you also heard another assent of sorts. When Judas had left them, Jesus said, now is the Son of Man glorified. It was over. It was over already. Jesus wasn't arrested. He wasn't condemned. He wasn't crucified. He didn't die on the cross. He wasn't put in the grave. But Jesus knew where all that was going, because Judas had made his decision, and he left. And Jesus said, now's the time for the Son of Man to be glorified. It's over, folks. Assent, whether for good or for ill, is very important. We've learned that from the time we were little tykes. What are the 3 conditions for mortal sin? You have to know it's something that's going to seriously separate you from God. You have to desire to do that, and you have to actually assent to it. You have to give your free will to it. Assent. God calls us to follow him with faith. Let's say yes.